Tobacco is an extremely labor-intensive product through forced slavery. Where do they get the forced slaves? They brought them from the Caribbean, or they brought them from the coast of Africa, which is where the Caribbean had got them, or they brought them from the Native Americans and sent them to the Caribbean or to Jamestown to work as forced labor but it was money making. That's all it was. That's how it got started in the U.S. But the interesting part is, the Anglican Church was also trying to convert the African slaves and the native slaves to Christianity. And a problem came up. What do you think that problem is? These people were wanting to become Christians. So there was a law that was written in Virginia in the 1650s or 70s that basically said if a slave becomes baptized, he doesn't lose his slave status. In other words, he may be a child of God, but we're going to still treat him different, as if he's not. And that became law. And it was because of the money that was involved. So let's talk a little bit about first century. And on your handout, just hit a few high points of this. Roman society in the time of Christ. I think we're all familiar with the emperor. The emperor controlled the ultimate finances, the military. He was also controlled the religious aspects because he was considered, some of them would say that he was considered himself to be a god or a son of a god. Underneath him was the Senate, a collective of several hundred very rich and wealthy people who controlled the power and the finance. They were the large landowners. Underneath them, you had wealthy citizens with various titles, nobles, whatever you want to call them. Equestrians, they were of the high military rank. They were large landowners who didn't want to be senators for one reason or another because they had what they thought was a better life in what they were doing outside of Rome. So they would control your political affairs, local political affairs, as well as even the religious affairs. Then you got to remember that those people, they have protected rights. Then you have your everyday citizen. They were referred to as freeborn. They have protected rights. They have a trial system. They can only be put to death if they have a trial in Rome. This is where you get an individual like Paul falls into that category. He was freeborn. That's why Paul was sent to Rome, because he was a Roman citizen. When you get into the next category, as Rome expanded their empire and they would capture countries, they would do one of two things. Either they would make that whole country slaves, or they learned from what the Greeks went through and what the Syrians went through with the Jewish people, that the Jewish people were stubborn and they would fight. So Rome basically let the Jewish people stay as a group instead of making them all slaves. So because they knew they would be in for a fight, and all they wanted was the tax money. So this is where you will find people like in Galilee with Christ, in Judah with people in Jerusalem and other places. They did not have Roman citizenship rights. They were basically nationalized. And the governor could put them to death. They didn't have the legal authority to go to Rome. This would be the category